The sun rises over the Nile, painting the eastern cliffs of Thebes in shades of gold and crimson, and I, Amenhotep-sa-Neith, prepare for another day in service to the divine Pharaoh. My hands are already stained with ink from yesterday's work, and the callus on my middle finger throbs from gripping the reed pen for countless hours. But this is the burden and the blessing of being a royal scribe in the 15th century before the birth of Christ. You might think being a scribe means sitting quietly in some dusty corner, copying boring documents all day. Wrong. Dead wrong. We were the memory keepers of an empire, the voices that would echo through eternity long after the pharaoh's mummy had turned to dust. Every word I carved into stone, every hieroglyph I painted on papyrus, every record I maintained could determine whether future generations would remember Thutmose III as a great conqueror or forget him entirely. My workshop sits in the shadow of the great temple complex, close enough to hear the morning chants of the priests, but far enough away to avoid the constant stream of pilgrims and petitioners. The room smells like a mixture of crushed minerals, gum arabic, and the faint sweetness of papyrus reeds. 23 different pigments line the shelves, each one worth more than most farmers see in a year. The red ochre comes from the desert beyond Memphis, the lapis lazuli from lands so distant I can barely pronounce their names, and the gold leaf, well, that comes directly from the royal treasury under armed guard. The tools of my trade would seem primitive to future generations, but they require more skill than any weapon a soldier might wield. My reed pens are cut from the finest marsh grass, each tip shaped with precision that would make a surgeon weep. Too thick, and the hieroglyphs look clumsy. Too thin, and they snap under pressure. The grinding stone where I prepare my inks has been worn smooth by generations of scribes before me, and the mixing bowls are stained with colours that tell the story of countless royal proclamations. But here's what nobody tells you about being a royal scribe. You don't just write what happens, you decide what survives. When Pharaoh returns from battle, covered in glory and dust, I'm the one who transforms his muddy account of the campaign into something worthy of the gods. That skirmish where half his men ran away, it becomes a tactical withdrawal. The tribute that was barely enough to fill a single cart, suddenly it's a mountain of gold that required 40 men to carry. This morning brings the usual parade of responsibilities that would drive lesser men to drink stronger wine than the temple allows. First, the daily inventory scrolls, every grain of wheat in the royal granaries, every bolt of linen in the workshops, every precious stone in the treasury. The numbers have to be perfect, because the vizier checks them against his own records, and being caught in an error means losing more than just your job. It means losing your afterlife, because a dishonest scribe's cannot find peace in the field of reeds. The mathematics alone would stump most people. We don't just count things, we calculate ratios, percentages, and projections that determine whether the kingdom prospers or starves. How much grain do we need to feed the workers building the pharaoh's tomb? How many cattle must be slaughtered for the Opet festival? How much gold should be allocated for diplomatic gifts versus temple offerings? Get these calculations wrong, and you'll have angry priests, starving workers, or insulted foreign kings at your door. Then there are the letters, endless streams of correspondence flowing between the capital and every corner of the empire. Provincial governors reporting on harvests, military commanders requesting supplies, foreign rulers sending tribute lists and marriage proposals. Each letter must be copied, filed, and often translated. Did you know that a royal scribe in the New Kingdom had to know at least 4 languages? Egyptian hieroglyphs for formal documents, hieratic script for daily correspondence, Akkadian for international diplomacy, and enough Nubian to deal with the gold mines. The most fascinating part of my work, and the most dangerous, involves the royal chronicles. These aren't just dry historical records. They're carefully crafted narratives designed to ensure the pharaoh's eternal reputation. Every battle becomes a glorious victory. Every diplomatic negotiation becomes a triumph of Egyptian superiority, and every building project becomes a monument to divine favor. But here's the tricky part. You can't make it too obviously fake, or future scribes will call you a liar. The art lies in finding the perfect balance between truth and legend. Take yesterday's session with the pharaoh himself. He stormed into my workshop, still wearing his battle kilt and smelling like horse sweat and victory, demanding to know how I planned to record his latest campaign against the Mitanni. His version of events involved single-handedly slaying dozens of enemy charioteers, while his horse breathed fire and his arrows never missed their mark. My job was to transform this enthusiastic but somewhat embellished account into something that would look believable, carved into temple walls. The process requires diplomacy skills that would impress any ambassador. You can't directly contradict the pharaoh, that's treason. But you can't write obvious fiction. That's incompetence. So I listened carefully, nodding at appropriate moments, then suggested that perhaps the gods guided his arrows with such precision that every shot found its mark, or that his divine nature so terrified the enemy horses that they appeared to breathe fire from fear. Pharaoh loved these interpretations because they made him sound even more godlike while keeping the account within the realm of believability. But the real challenge comes when different witnesses give contradictory accounts of the same event. The general says the battle was won by superior strategy. The cavalry commander insists it was their lightning-fast charge that turned the tide. The infantry captain claims his men's discipline saved the day. Meanwhile, the pharaoh believes his personal courage inspired divine intervention. My job is to weave all these perspectives into a single narrative that honors everyone's contribution while maintaining the pharaoh's central role as the chosen of the gods. The tools for this delicate work go far beyond pens and papyrus. I maintain what amounts to a private intelligence network, temple priests who overhear confessions, merchants who carry gossip from distant cities, servants who know which officials are feuding with each other. Information is more valuable than gold in my profession, and knowing the right secrets can mean the difference between writing history and becoming a forgotten footnote in someone else's chronicle. The afternoon brings the temple records, and this is where my work touches the divine realm directly. Every offering, every ritual, every prayer spoken in the pharaoh's name must be documented with perfect accuracy. The gods are apparently excellent bookkeepers because any mistake in the temple accounts brings swift and terrible consequences. I've seen priests struck down by mysterious illnesses after recording incorrect offering amounts, and I have no desire to join them in whatever unpleasant afterlife awaits those who anger the divine accountants. The religious texts require a completely different set of skills from the royal chronicles. While propaganda allows for creative interpretation, sacred writings demand absolute precision. Every hieroglyph must be perfectly formed, every spell copied exactly as handed down from the ancestors. One misplaced symbol in a funerary text could trap the pharaoh's soul in eternal darkness instead of guiding it to the afterlife. Talk about pressure. Your handwriting literally determines whether the God King achieves immortality or suffers forever in the underworld. The weight of eternal responsibility sits heavy on my shoulders as I prepare the sacred texts. But it's the living politics of the palace that truly test my skills as a scribe. You see, recording history isn't just about what happened. It's about navigating the treacherous waters of court intrigue while keeping everyone happy enough that they don't decide you know too many dangerous secrets. Take this morning's audience with the Queen Mother. She swept into my workshop like a sandstorm, her jewelry jangling with each dramatic gesture, demanding to know why her son's victory over the Nubians received only 3 columns on the temple wall, while his father's campaign against the Hittites got 7. Did I mention that the previous pharaoh was her late husband? Family politics in the royal house make a nest of cobras look like friendly puppies. The mathematics of royal ego management would stump the best mathematicians in Memphis. Every member of the royal family expects their deeds to be recorded with appropriate grandeur. But temple walls, have limited space, and palace politics have unlimited complications. The Queen wants her charitable works emphasized. The Crown Prince thinks his hunting expeditions deserve epic treatment. Even the royal architect believes his building projects should be mentioned alongside military victories. My job is to balance all these competing demands while making sure nobody feels slighted enough to have me fed to the sacred crocodiles. But here's what makes the whole situation even more interesting. I'm not just writing for the living. Everything I carve in stone or paint on tomb walls will be read by the gods themselves. The ancient texts tell us that divine beings are even more particular about accurate record-keeping than mortal rulers. Imagine having to satisfy both an impatient pharaoh, who wants his glorious deeds recorded immediately, and celestial deities who will spend eternity checking your work for errors. The afternoon brings my favourite task, working on the pharaoh's tomb inscriptions. This isn't morbid fascination with death, it's the ultimate test of a scribe's skill. These texts will guide the pharaoh's soul through the dangerous journey to the afterlife, past demons and challenges that would make the most hardened warrior tremble. Every word must be perfect, because there are no second chances once the tomb is sealed. The Book of the Dead isn't actually a single book, but a collection of spells, prayers, and instructions that took me 3 years to fully understand. Some sections require knowledge of astronomy. The soul must navigate by stars that only appear in the underworld. Other parts demand understanding of geography that doesn't exist in our world. Rivers of fire, mountains made of precious stones, cities populated by gods with the heads of animals. Today, I'm working on spell 125, the judgment scene where the pharaoh's heart will be weighed against the feather of truth. This is the most critical moment in the entire afterlife journey. If his heart is heavier than the feather, meaning he lived an unrighteous life, it gets devoured by a monster with the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Talk about nightmare fuel. The tricky part is that I have to write this spell as if the pharaoh will automatically pass the test, while secretly knowing that some of his earthly decisions might cause problems with the divine scales of justice. That campaign where we burned 3 villages just to make a point about tribute payments. The time he had his brother-in-law executed on suspicion of treason. These actions need careful theological interpretation to ensure they don't weigh down his heart when Anubis does the final accounting. But working on tomb texts also brings moments of genuine wonder that remind me why I chose this profession. The spells that transform the pharaoh into different creatures during his journey are pure poetry. One passage allows him to become a falcon soaring above the celestial waters. Another turns him into a lotus flower floating on the sacred lake. My personal favourite transforms him into a phoenix that burns and resurrects itself with each sunrise, symbolising eternal renewal. The pigments I use for these sacred texts come with their own mystical properties. The gold ink isn't just decorative, it represents the flesh of the gods, incorruptible and eternal. The lapis lazuli blue symbolises the heavens and the hair of divine beings. Even the carbon black has spiritual significance, representing the fertile soil of the afterlife, where the pharaoh's soul will flourish forever. Creating these texts requires physical endurance that would surprise most people. My hand cramps from holding the brush steady during detailed hieroglyphic work. My back aches from bending over papyrus sheets that stretch longer than most houses. My eyes water from mixing pigments and squinting at tiny details in flickering oil lamplight. But every ache and pain feels worthwhile when I step back and see a completed section that might guide a god-king safely to immortality. The workshop falls quiet as evening approaches, but my work continues by lamplight. Night brings different responsibilities, copying diplomatic correspondence that arrives after dark, updating secret records that can't be seen by day workers, preparing special texts that require the mystical properties of darkness to be properly inscribed. Tonight's task involves something most people never hear about: the shadow records. These are backup copies of the most important documents, hidden away in secret locations throughout the kingdom. Why? Because even royal scribes understand that empires can fall, libraries can burn, and the most carefully preserved records can vanish without warning. Somewhere beneath the sands of Egypt, future generations might discover these hidden archives and learn the true story of our age. The irony isn't lost on me that I spend my days crafting eternal monuments in hieroglyphs, while knowing that nothing truly lasts forever. The pyramids of the Old Kingdom already show signs of age, and some of the greatest pharaohs of the past are remembered now only through fragments of broken stone. Yet something compels me to continue this work, to add my voice to the chorus of scribes who have served as the memory of Egypt for thousands of years. As I prepare tomorrow's pigments and sharpen fresh reed pens, I can't help wondering what stories future scribes will tell about our era. Will they see Thutmose III as the great conqueror I'm helping to create in the official records? Will they understand the delicate balance of truth and legend that shapes every royal chronicle? Or will they read between the lines and discover the real story hidden beneath layers of diplomatic language and religious symbolism? Beneath layers of diplomatic language and religious symbolism. The lamplight flickers against the walls as I settle into the evening's most delicate work. The personal correspondence that could reshape the fate of kingdoms. You see, being a royal scribe doesn't just mean recording what happened. It means crafting what will happen through the careful art of diplomatic language. Tonight's letters will travel to Babylon, to the courts of Syrian princes, and to the gold mines of Nubia, carrying messages that could start wars or prevent them, depending on how skillfully I choose each word. The letter to the Babylonian king requires particular finesse. He's been late with his tribute payments, claiming poor harvests and bandit raids, but our spies report his granaries are full and his armies are well fed. The pharaoh wants to send a message that's firm enough to get results, but diplomatic enough to avoid giving offense to a ruler who commands 30,000 chariots. It's like trying to threaten someone while simultaneously complimenting their mother and asking about their health. I begin with the traditional courtesies. May the gods grant you life, prosperity, and health. But even these innocent phrases carry subtle meanings. The order of the blessings matters. Put prosperity before health. And you're suggesting he values gold more than his people's welfare. Mention too many gods, and you imply his own deities aren't powerful enough to protect him. Skip the wrong ceremonial title, and you've committed an insult that could take years to repair. The real artistry comes in the middle section, where I have to convey the pharaoh's displeasure without actually stating it directly. Instead of writing, "Pay your tribute or face our armies," I craft something like, "The great pharaoh remembers with fondness the generous gifts that have traditionally flowed between our kingdoms, and trusts that the current difficulties preventing such exchanges will soon be resolved through the wisdom of the gods and the diligence of faithful servants." Translation: pay up or we're coming for you, but said so politely that he can't claim offense. But here's where it gets really tricky. These letters don't just go to their intended recipients. Copies get filed in the royal archives, where future scribes will read them. More importantly, they often get intercepted by spies, merchants, or rival kingdoms looking for intelligence about Egyptian intentions. Every word I write must work on multiple levels, clear enough for the intended reader, diplomatic enough to avoid causing offense if it falls into the wrong hands, and clever enough to maintain Egypt's reputation for sophisticated statecraft. The Syrian correspondence presents different challenges entirely. Those princes are constantly switching sides in the great game of Near Eastern politics, and their loyalty depends entirely on who they think will win the next major war. This week, they're sending tribute and pledging eternal friendship. Next month, they might be harboring Egyptian fugitives and making secret deals with our enemies. My job is to craft responses that acknowledge their current friendship, while subtly reminding them of the consequences of betrayal. The formula I've developed over years of practice involves what I call layered messaging. On the surface, everything sounds cordial and cooperative. Dig deeper, and you find gentle reminders of Egyptian military strength. Look even more carefully, and you'll discover subtle threats wrapped in religious language that would make the gods themselves proud of their eloquence. It's like writing 3 different letters in the same scroll, each one visible only to readers with the appropriate level of understanding. Take this phrase I'm working on tonight. May your cities flourish under the protection of the gods as they have under the watchful care of Pharaoh's friendship. Sounds nice, right? But any competent court scribe will understand the implications. Cities that flourish under Pharaoh's friendship might not flourish so well without it. The watchful care reminds them that Egypt has eyes and ears everywhere. Even the religious blessing carries a warning. The gods protect those who honor their earthly representative. The Nubian dispatches require yet another approach entirely. These aren't diplomatic equals like the Babylonians or unreliable allies like the Syrians. These are conquered territories whose governors need regular reminders about who's really in charge. But you can't be too heavy-handed, or you'll spark rebellions that cost more to suppress than the gold mines produce. The art lies in projecting strength while maintaining the fiction that everyone's happy with the current arrangement. My favorite technique for these southern provinces involves what I call historical reminders. Instead of directly threatening punishment for disloyalty, I include casual references to previous pharaohs who dealt firmly with troublemakers. As in the glorious days when Pharaoh Thutmose brought peace and prosperity to all the southern lands. Everyone knows that Thutmose's version of bringing peace involved burning several cities to the ground and relocating entire populations. But by framing it as ancient history and focusing on the prosperity that followed, I can make the threat sound like a blessing. The merchant correspondence brings completely different headaches. These traders care nothing for diplomatic niceties or religious symbolism. They want to know about taxes, shipping schedules, and protection from bandits. But they also serve as unofficial ambassadors, carrying news and gossip throughout the known world. A careless phrase in a trade agreement could become a rumor that Egypt's economy is struggling, or that the pharaoh is planning military campaigns, or that certain trade routes are no longer secure. Tonight, I'm drafting new regulations for the copper merchants who worked the Sinai mines. The previous rules were apparently too vague, leading to disputes over quality standards and delivery schedules. But I can't make the new regulations so strict that they drive the merchants to seek partnerships with Egypt's rivals. The language needs to be precise enough to prevent arguments while flexible enough to accommodate the realities of desert mining and long-distance transport. The challenge multiplies when you consider that these trade documents often get copied and shared among merchant networks, spanning from Mesopotamia to the Aegean Sea. Every clause I write will be analysed by foreign traders looking for advantages, by rival kingdoms seeking intelligence about Egyptian resources, and by our own officials trying to maximise tax revenue without killing the business entirely. But perhaps the most complex correspondence involves the temple hierarchies scattered throughout the kingdom. These priests wield enormous influence over local populations, control vast amounts of wealth, and maintain their own networks of information that sometimes rival the pharaoh's intelligence services. They require a delicate balance of respect for their religious authority and firm reminders about their political obligations. The letter I'm crafting to the high priest of Amun at Karnak illustrates these challenges perfectly. He's been questioning the pharaoh's decision to build a new temple to Thoth instead of expanding the existing Amun complex. On one level, this is a religious dispute about which god deserves more honor. On another level, it's a political power struggle about who controls temple construction budgets. On the deepest level, it's a test of whether the pharaoh truly rules as a god or merely serves as the priest's puppet. My response must acknowledge the priest's theological concerns, while firmly establishing royal authority over religious construction projects. I begin with elaborate praise for his wisdom and devotion, then gradually introduce the concept that the gods themselves have guided the pharaoh's decision through divine dreams and omens. By the end of the letter, opposition to the new temple becomes opposition to the will of the gods themselves, a position no priest can openly maintain. The evening grows late, but the most sensitive work still awaits. Hidden in a locked chest beneath my workbench are the documents that could reshape the ancient world, or get me executed for treason if discovered by the wrong people. These are the secret communications between the pharaoh and his most trusted agents throughout the known world. Some messages coordinate military campaigns that won't begin for months. Others arrange marriages between royal children and foreign princes to cement political alliances. The most sensitive correspondence involves what future generations might call espionage, payments to foreign officials, instructions for agents operating in rival kingdoms, and intelligence reports about enemy military preparations. Tonight's secret work involves a coded message to our agent in the Hittite capital. The code itself is a marvel of scribal ingenuity. Each innocent-looking hieroglyph actually represents a different symbol entirely, based on a substitution system that changes depending on the day of the month and the phase of the moon. To anyone intercepting the message, it appears to be a routine religious text about offerings to the god Ptah. To our agent, it's detailed intelligence about Hittite troop movements and instructions for sabotaging their supply lines. Creating these coded messages requires skills they don't teach in the scribal schools. You need to understand not just hieroglyphic writing, but also the psychology of enemy codebreakers who might try to decrypt your work. The message must look genuinely religious to casual observers, while conveying precise military intelligence to the intended recipient. Every symbol serves double duty, and a single mistake could compromise operations that have taken years to establish. The physical act of writing these secret documents demands special precautions too. I use a different set of pens, mixed with inks that fade after exposure to sunlight for more than a few days. The papyrus itself is treated with chemicals that cause the text to become illegible if anyone tries to copy it without knowing the proper preservation techniques. Even my handwriting style changes. Smaller, more compressed, using letter forms that could belong to any of a dozen different scribes throughout the kingdom. But the real security lies in the distribution methods. These messages don't travel through normal diplomatic channels. Instead, they're sewn into the linings of merchant caravans' clothing, hidden inside religious artifacts being transported between temples, or even tattooed onto the scalps of trusted messengers, who then grow their hair out to conceal the text. One particularly clever technique involves writing the message on papyrus, then dissolving it in water and using that water to make bread. The recipient knows to soak the bread until the text reappears on the surface. The weight of these secrets presses down on me like the massive stone blocks of the pyramids. Every coded message I create could determine whether Egyptian armies march to victory or defeat. Every piece of intelligence I relay might save thousands of lives or condemn them to death. The pharaoh trusts me with information that could topple kingdoms, and I carry that trust with the same reverence other men reserve for sacred relics. As dawn approaches and the oil in my lamp burns low, I reflect on the strange duality of my existence. By day, I'm a respected court official, recording glorious deeds for posterity and corresponding with foreign dignitaries. By night, I'm a shadowy figure crafting messages that could start wars or prevent them, maintaining networks of spies and informants that stretch across the known world. The tools scattered across my workbench tell the story of this double life. Ordinary reed pens for official documents sit alongside specialized styluses for coded messages. Standard black and red inks share space with special formulations that react to heat, moisture, or specific chemical treatments. Religious texts, waiting for copying tomorrow morning, rest next to intelligence reports that must be destroyed before sunrise. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new letters to craft, new secrets to encode, and new diplomatic puzzles to solve. The pharaoh's legacy depends not just on his victories in battle, but on the words I choose to preserve those victories for eternity. Every sentence I write becomes a thread in the great tapestry of Egyptian history, and I am both its weaver and its guardian. The eastern sky begins to show the first pale hints of dawn, and I must prepare for another day of serving as the voice of a god-king. But for now, in these final moments of darkness, I am simply a man with ink-stained fingers and the weight of empire resting on his reed pen, crafting the stories that will echo through eternity, long after the last pyramid crumbles to dust. Pyramid crumbles to dust. The sun sets over Thebes as it has for countless generations, and I set down my reed pen with the same mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction that has marked the end of every scribal day since the time of the first pharaohs. My hands may be stained with ink, and my back may ache from hours bent over papyrus, but I have done something that will outlast the mightiest warrior's sword and the richest merchant's gold. I have given voice to eternity itself. Tomorrow will bring new dispatches to encode, new histories to craft, and new secrets to guard. But tonight I rest knowing that somewhere in the vast silence of the future, someone will read these words and understand that we were here, that we mattered, and that even in an age of gods and kings, it was the humble scribe who truly held the power of immortality in his ink-stained fingers.